Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the Windsor Township Conditional Use Hearing to order this evening. And where we concluded at the last hearing was with Mr. Hague. Is it Hague or High? Hague. Mr. Hague, if you want to come forward again to the podium. It's my understanding that members of the board have some questions for you. So what I'm going to do is proceed with those questions, and then we'll see if that produces any additional questions from the parties.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Hague.
Good evening.
I have two questions for you that I went over some stuff when I got home and came up with these. Could you go to Exhibit 022, please? It's the picture of the transformers.
Yes. I know what you're talking about.
Okay. I was looking at this, and it didn't catch my eye until later on. You spend an awful lot of time discussing the height of the transformers, remember?
Yes.
Okay, and the permissible height of the transformers would be 20 feet, correct?
The permissible height in the under 615 in the for a commercial solar farm is 20 feet.
Okay. I see a number here that you have written on the right-hand side. It's 194 inches, 194 and a half inches.
That's right.
When I went to school, I knew there was 240 inches and 20 feet. So you're well underneath that number.
What I testified to is that in the ordinance it says no structure, or it says no structure can exceed 20 feet.
Correct.
Next to that transformer in a 69 kV substation, you will have a disconnect switch or a bus support. And I went through an extensive discussion about the fact that your conductors, your 69 kV phase conductors, have to come off the top of the tap. They have to go upward. Now the transformer itself will be sitting on a 1-foot foundation. We do that so that we don't have it flooded. By the time you get done with going up to your bus support structure, you're up about 22, 23 feet. So it's not the transformer itself, it's the fact that you have to come off the top of the transformer and you have to have a 4 foot 11 inch clearance between the conductor and any metal part. So when you design the substation, that support structure on the high side will be about 22, 23 feet.
Well, this picture depicts the insulators on the top of the transformer. Is that part of the disconnect switch?
No, disconnect switch is an entirely different structure. You go from those high voltage insulators at the top at the 194 and a half inches. Then you go up. And you go up to the bus support. You also in that substation will have a lightning mast. And the lightning mast will be 35 to 40 foot. And then you also have part of the commercial solar farm structures includes transmission lines. And transmission lines will be more than 20 feet. So it's not just the transformer, it's the connection to the transformer.
Well, and we allow telephone poles and electric poles in the township anywhere. They're over 20 feet as well, correct? A utility is a utility. They need to do what they need to do to get their services around.
The way your ordinance reads, it applies the 20-foot clearance to the substation and to the transmission lines. Now, I can get you the ordinance and read the ordinance if you'd like me to.
No, that's fine. It would have been less confusing if the disconnect switches would have been included in this picture to spell that out.
I thought I had a fairly clear explanation of it in my testimony.
Yeah. I must have missed that, sorry.
All right.
All right. On going to the noise, your noise calculations on line item 39 of your study. Do you have that?
Line item 39 in my report.
Your report, yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, you have different calculations here from the pads of the inverters to each individual road, and it gives the footage from each pad to the road and where you made your calculations. If I remember correct, you calculated these numbers in a straight line, is that correct?
Calculate a straight line from where the inverters were shown on the plan to where the road is. At the edge of the property line.
Okay. Had you done any, in your calculations, did you do any elevation changes between the point on the road and the point of the pad?
I used the same straight line calculation that was in the health and safety plan by Mr. Cleveland. However, he calculated it at the neighbor residential property across the street because he used the EPA standard, the World Health Organization standard, and did not look at the the township ordinance, which clearly says the point of analysis is at or on the property line.
But the point that I'm trying to get at is in the elevation change, isn't the earth itself a sound deadening device? If your road is here and your transformer is here, you would not have the same decibel level as if the transformer was up here and your road was down here, correct?
You can have some buffering from vegetation, yes.
Should that have been part of the calculations?
As I said, I tried to duplicate the calculations that were put in by the health and safety. Now, your applicant refused twice to allow the author, who we do not know who it is, of the Kimley Horn report to testify. He relied upon Mr. Cleveland's testimony as to an expert witness for noise. Mr. Cleveland did not include any buffering.
Okay, those were the only two things that I had. You guys have anything? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mazeka. Based on those questions, Mrs. Polonic, do you have any questions for this witness? Mr. Hartman? Mr. Hoffner is not present. Mrs. Stabile? Oh, you're here this evening, Mrs. Stabile. Do you have any questions? Mr. and Mrs. Yob? I'm going to give you guys assigned seats because it's really hard for me to find you. Mr. Ossenbach, not present. Mr. Balthaser, do you have any questions?
I do not, and neither does Mrs. Balthaser.
Okay, Mrs. Balthaser is with you this evening?
She is present this evening, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Fowler, do you have any questions? No questions. Mr. Fowler? No. Okay. Mr. Gallagher, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Is there any redirect? Mr. Cluck? No. Okay. Thank you. The witness is excused.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Cluck, you may call your next witness.
Before we do that, a little housekeeping. I moved into... Sorry, Mike. I want to move into evidence exhibits 18 through 24. I think that's where we left off.
Are there any objections to these exhibits? I'll start with you, Mrs. Polonic. No. Mr. Hartman? No objections. Mrs. Stabile? Mr. and Mrs. Yob? And just for the record, Mrs. Stabile nodded her head no. I did not notate that for the record. Mr. Balthaser and Mrs. Balthaser?
No objections.
No objection.
Ms. Fowler? Mr. Fowler?
No objection.
Okay. Mr. Gallagher?
No objections. You just asked the Fowlers as if they were parties. That
I'm going to go there in one moment. I just want to address the exhibits. Okay. And so the exhibits will be admitted and made part of the record. At this point, we should, before we proceed to the next witness, we should address the motion that was made with regard to the standing for Ms. Fowler and Mr. Fowler. If you want to come forward, Mr. and Ms. Fowler. And then, Mr. Gallagher, do you want to state your objection again for the record?
Yes, we had reserved standing objections at the beginning of this hearing. The Fowlers they didn't enter their appearance until 2 hearings ago when this objection was addressed last time. They've been represented by Mr. Cluck. We did not object to anybody who Mr. Cluck represented because we knew that at least one member of their group had standing, so there was no point in objecting to anybody else. The Fowlers are not taxpayers of Windsor Township, and we do not believe that they meet the standing threshold as addressed in applicant's exhibit 33.
Okay. Ms. Fowler, can you state again how close are you to the proposed project site?
About 0.55 miles.
Okay. Mr. Gallagher, can you address why since the Fowlers live less than 1 mile from the location of the site, why that would not provide them with standing?
You have to be a taxpayer, property owner. Mr. Fowler may be, but Ms. Fowler is not. Additionally, they have been represented by counsel throughout these entire proceedings. So,
I don't think the representation status changes their standing status. Do you have a citation for your proposition that they must be taxpayers within the township?
nothing beyond our memorandum.
Okay, is there a case that
32.
there's a case that stands for that proposition?
I do not have it with me right now.
Is there a citation in your memorandum to that effect?
That you have to live in, yes, that you have to live in close proximity to the site. So that would be it.
The objection is overruled, and Mr. Fowler and Ms. Fowler are granted party status.
Thank you.
Mr. Cluck, you may now proceed with your next witness.
Well, just with respect to Mr. Fowler, Ms. Fowler is not a property owner. We had it was the same argument that was addressed with respect to Ms. Lang.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Cluck, you're going to have to wait a few more minutes. You may address the board, Ms. Fowler.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to mention was we entered our entry appearance at the second conditional use hearing by being represented by Mr. Cluck. So we gave you timely opportunity to object to our standing. And I want to point out, I don't remember the exhibit number off the top of my head, but when you wrote to ask Ms. Lang's standing to be revoked, it says clearly in your brief, after reviewing their entry of appearances, Mountain Trail does not object to the standing of any of the new objectors who entered their appearances at the October 24th, 2023 hearing. That is when my dad and I entered our appearances.
Mr. Gallagher, can you explain to me how you have not waived your objection to Ms. Fowler by the statement that was just read into the record?
I'm just reiterating what we said. I said earlier that they were represented by Mr. Cluck, so we had no objection to anybody because there was a representation. We knew that there was at least one party who had standing, and he was representing the whole. So it was. As addressed earlier, if one person has standing and represented by council, then everyone has standing. So this is a little bit different situation than before.
I understand your argument. However, I do think that you specifically stated that you did not object to their individual standing. It was not with respect to their standing as part of a community group. Therefore, your objection is overruled based on your waiver of that objection, and Ms. Fowler is permitted to remain as a party to this proceeding.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Gallagher?
No, that's it.
Okay. I just didn't want to run Mr. Cluck up to the podium again to tell him to sit down. Mr. Cluck, you may now call your next witness.
Dean Heckman, please.
You confirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Why is the door open? Hold on, Russ. Never mind. Mr. Heckman, good evening. What is your address?
136 Blisle Road.
And how long have you lived there?
This summer it'll be 29 years.
And do you own or rent your home?
We own.
And who do you live with?
My wife, Debbie.
Okay, and both you and Debbie are parties to this proceeding?
Yes,
And you're going to be the one testifying, not Debbie, correct?
that's correct.
Okay. What's your present occupation?
Retired.
Tell me about living at 136 Blisle Road for the almost...
I object on relevance grounds. This appears to be an attempt to introduce public comment as part of the case in chief.
Mr. Cluck, do you have a response to that objection?
Yeah, I object to the objection. We are going to have testimony from the residents with respect to Section 806 of the ordinance on whether the proposed use will substantially injure or detract from the use of the neighborhood property, from the character of the area, public health, safety, and welfare, fire protection, and rebutting certain comments made by their expert witnesses. Now, if somebody in public comment wants to say that, that's fine, but this is not public comment, this is evidence.
This is quintessential public comment. These are personal opinions. We understand that all of Mr. Cluck's clients are in opposition to the application. However, none of them have specialized experience to testify and provide evidence in opposition. This is opinion testimony, and it's public comment.
By your definition, Mr. Gallagher, the only witnesses that would be admissible at this hearing would be expert witnesses, which is of course not the case. Lay witnesses are permitted to provide opinion. However, Mr. Cluck, I will caution you that I don't want to hear duplicative testimony, and I want to make sure that we stay close to the relevance of the testimony. So the objection is going to be overruled. However, if you stray from the relevant testimony, I will entertain another objection. Please proceed.
Mr. Heckman, do you have well water for your property?
Yes, we do.
If there was a fire across the street from the solar panels, who would respond and how would they get water to fight the fire?
I would imagine it'd either be the Hamburg Fire Company or the Virginsville Fire Company.
Is there a fire hydrant anywhere in your neighborhood?
I believe it's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles away.
In front of you, there's a packet of photographs. We marked for evidentiary purposes, objector exhibit number 25. There are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 10 photographs, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you take these photos?
Yes, I did.
Okay, let's start with the first one. Are all of these photos taken from the same location or similar location?
Yeah, these are out in front of at our property.
Okay, looking at the first photograph, I see the number 136 on a post. That's your property?
Yes, it is.
And looking across the street, do you know whose property that is?
That is the Frederick property.
And is that where they're proposing to have solar panels?
Yes, it is.
And what do you perceive the distance to be from your property line to the Frederick's property line?
Just whatever the width of Blile Road is, would it be like 20 feet?
Do you believe there'll be a negative impact on your property value?
I feel there will be, sure.
Okay. And your property is within less than 300 yards?
Yeah.
If there was a reduction in your property value of 1.5%, would that be significant to you?
Yeah, to me it would be.
When was the first photograph taken?
That was October of 2023.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about that photograph?
No, it pretty much says it all.
Okay. The second one, when was that taken?
That was also taken in October of 2023.
And what does that depict?
That's in the front yard looking up Blile Road a little bit, but that is also the Frederick property.
So if I'm comparing, if I put the first photograph side by side with the second photograph, is that a fair representation looking left to right from photo 1 to photo 2?
Yeah, I'm just back in the yard a little bit farther.
Okay. And the fields across the street, those are on higher ground than your location?
I might actually be up a little bit higher.
Okay. But that's where the panels are going to be on all of that, all the property that's across the street is going to be solar panels?
Yes.
Third photograph, is there anything different about this photograph? Why did you take it? What does it depict?
I just wanted to give a panoramic view of my front yard looking across to the Frederick property.
Okay, and was this taken October 2023 also?
Yes, it was.
Okay, the fourth one, I see a structure that has red siding on it. What is that?
That's my neighbor's shed.
Okay, neighbor to the left or right? If you're facing the Frederick property from the
To the
photo-
left, that's the Jeff and Cindy Bryan.
That's the Bryan property?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we know who they are. And what is across, I see trees. In the foreground, whose tree is that?
Well, those are on the Bryan property. The scenery above that is the Gaspari property.
If I look in the middle of the photograph, I see dark green trees surrounded by trees that look like it's the fall. Where are those trees located?
The green ones are on the Bryan property, and the other ones are on the Gaspari property.
And the fields that look like they're vacant, whose property is that, and is that where solar panels are going to go?
Yeah, that's the Gaspari property. That one was taken off the deck of my pool.
The next photograph depicts that, is that the Bryan shed? Is that what we want to call that, a barn, a shed?
Yeah, this one was taken off the back porch looking over the Gaspari property towards the mushroom plant,
Okay.
over towards Gruber.
Next one, also taken October 23, what does this depict?
That's from the back porch looking over the Gaspari property.
So if the first photograph is looking from the front of your home across the street, is that correct?
Yeah,
This photograph number 6 is that taken from your back, looking the other way?
Yeah, this is in the backyard.
Okay, and the view from the backyard, are those going to be solar panels on those vacant fields?
Yeah.
Whose home is, I see on the right-hand side, it looks like 2 different roofs?
It's Jeff and Cindy.
That's also them. Next photograph, what does that depict?
That was taken January of this year. That's the water standing and a little bit of the runoff on the Frederick property.
Is this across the street from you?
Yes, this is across the street.
And what I'm going to perceive as white, that's water runoff?
Yeah.
Next picture looks to be similar, also January of this year?
Yeah, they were both taken at the same time.
Okay, and what does this depict?
That's also water runoff.
Next photograph looks like a lot of, is that snow geese?
Yeah, that's the snow geese migration that took the picture in the backyard.
And that's February of 2020?
Yes.
Okay. This is, again, looking from your backyard view?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the backyard.
And then the last photograph, what are we looking at?
Oh, that's a picture of an eagle that I taken from the backyard.
And that was taken, is it June 21?
Yes.
2021. Again, backyard?
Yes.
Okay. So, if you're in the front yard looking across the street where the solar panels are going to be, are there any trees on your property that serve as a buffer between your property and the solar panels?
No.
If I'm in the backyard with the views that you showed, are there any trees on your property that serve as a buffer between your backyard and the solar panels that you've depicted in the photos, or that are going to be depicted?
No, there's not.
Tell me about your use and enjoyment of your property. What do you and your wife like to do in your retired state, and how do you enjoy
Object. I'm rolling this around.
It's in the ordinance.
I'm going to overrule the objection, but let's keep it as close to the ordinance as we can here.
If your use and enjoyment of your property is adversely affected by 449 acres of solar panels, do you believe there's an adverse impact on public health, safety, and welfare as a result?
Well, I know if there's a fire, there could be a problem. As far as the landscape and everything, I think it's going to take away from the character of the land and everything with everybody. You know, in the summertime, we like to sit outside. And with a project like this, no matter if you're out front or out back, the only thing you're going to see are solar panels.
Is there anything else that you wanted to cover in your testimony that I haven't asked you about this evening?
No, I don't think so.
That's all I have for this witness.
Mr. Gallagher, cross-examination.
Good evening, Mr. Congratulations on retirement.
Thank you.
What were you before you retired from?
I used to work at Cartech in Reading.
Are you an engineer?
No,
Certified appraiser?
no,
Hydrologist?
no,
Biologist?
no.
Looking at these pictures you've taken, the second and third pictures, see a telephone pole right outside on the road,
Yes,
wires. Would you estimate that that's higher than 20 feet?
Objection, relevance.
What's the relevance of that question?
Or just, I'm asking if you took these pictures and these are on this property, I want to know what his thoughts are whether or not there's something that's more than 20 feet outside on his property.
It's cross-examination, so I'll allow it. Overruled.
What was the question again?
Do you think the wires outside on pictures 2 and 3 are over 20 feet?
Over 20 feet high?
Yes.
Probably.
I have no further questions.
Do any members of the board have questions for this witness? Mrs. Polonic is already shaking her head no, so no questions. Mr. Hartman, any questions? No questions from Mr. Hartman. Mrs. Stabile? No questions. Mr. and Mrs. Yob?
No.
Mr. Balthaser?
No questions?
Mrs. Balthaser?
No questions.
Ms. Fowler?
I have one.
Yes.
I couldn't see the runoff picture that you handed out as an exhibit, but I wanted to ask you, are you concerned about that runoff getting worse if this project were to be approved, and would it end up on your property?
I believe if you would get heavy rain, I believe the water running off the panels would create a problem, that you would have more runoff sitting down there.
Thank you.
Mr. Fowler? No questions. Is there any redirect, Mr. Cluck?
No.
Okay. This witness is excused. You may call your next witness.
Here's your record. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You state your name, please,
Susan D. Turk,
and your address.
142 Blau Road,
How long have you lived there?
35 years.
What's your occupation?
I'm a registered nurse.
Tell me about your property.
So I feel I live in a beautiful area. I live in a 2-story home with a wraparound front porch. And I am always enjoying the view, the rolling hills, the farmland, the nature, and the peaceful neighborhood. I love where I live. What is not to love? I have been commuting I-78 for 35 years, had multiple opportunities to move. My colleagues think I'm insane because I drive I-78 in snow, sleet, and rain all hours of the day. But when they come to visit, they totally understand. They just are in envy. They envy the peacefulness, the view, the rolling hills, and the open land, and they totally understand.
Do you have well water?
I do.
Are there trees on your property?
One tree in my backyard off to the left.
Do you know how old that tree is? Has it been there the entire time you've owned your property?
Pretty much so, yes.
Okay. Is there a fire hydrant near your property?
No.
Are you concerned about the impact of the 449 acres on your property value?
I am.
And if your property value was to decrease by 1.5%, would that be material to you?
Absolutely.
I would reject again. This is getting repetitive of testimony as well as Mr. Bryan.
If you will stipulate that each of my clients all believe their property values will be adversely affected, they're each on well water, none of them have trees that serve as old growth that purports to be a barrier that impacts the heat effect, then I will withdraw any further questioning of witnesses.
Are you willing to enter into that stipulation, Mr. Gallagher?
I'm sorry. I'll stipulate. Everything sounded good except for the tree issue and the heat island effect. I don't believe anybody is, you can stipulate that nobody's an expert in that area.
No, I'm not going to stipulate. We're going to have somebody talk about that. That's all I have for Mr. Turk, unless I missed something. Well, hold on for a
Well-
second. Let him rule first.
I'm going to overrule the objection. While the testimony is similar, I think that it's different as to each witness. So unless there's a stipulation, I believe that we do have to hear from each witness on what their opinion is with regard to these issues.
Okay, Susan, did I cover
Okay.
everything that you wanted to talk about this evening?
I just wanted to clarify something that was stated a couple hearings ago. You know, as a homeowner who's worked hard for what I have, I would expect my neighbor to build a shed, build a fence, or install a pool, but I would not expect a 400-acre solar farm, probably within, well, the road, and then I'm giving them 100 feet, so 120 feet from my home. Specifically, why I don't expect it is I queried Catherine Frederick years ago, asked her, questioned her, queried her about the farmland, and she said, quote, "That is good farmland." So I would never expect this to be happening.
Yeah, objection on hearsay, Your Honor.
Sustained. Ms. Polonic, do you have any questions? Mr. Hartman? No questions. Mrs. Stabile? No questions. Mr. and Mrs. Yob? No questions. Mr. Balthaser, do you have any questions?
No questions?
Mrs. Balthaser?
No questions.
Ms. Fowler? Mr. Fowler?
Okay, you say you respect your neighbor's decisions if they want to put a shed up or put a fence up and all that other stuff. Why don't you respect? Why don't you respect the farmer's decision to do with his land what he wants to do? He is also a resident and taxpayer of this township. Do you feel you have? I'm going to ask everybody that comes up here. Do you feel you have the right to tell a farmer what he can and can't do with his property? If he decided to put a pig farm on that property, would you have an objection?
I would expect a farmer to make decisions with a conscience.
His farm is a business.
I often wonder what my grandfather would say. He was a farmer. He milked cows every day. He farmed his land and supported his herd and farm.
There was also testimony at one of the planning commission hearings that farmers also use that land as their retirement. Is that fair to take that away from them?
Like I said, I think I would expect a farmer to make a decision with a good conscience.
Well, I heard your opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, do you have a question?
My question is, you own the property for how many years?
35 years. I was probably one of the first people. I think there were probably 3 homes on Blount Road when we built our home.
Okay. So you've been there a long time.
Yeah.
So your property was zoned as agricultural when you bought it with the approval to put lots along that property, correct?
Correct.
And the land across the road that we're referencing here, that was zoned as what?
Agricultural.
And they're essentially changing that use to?
To me, industrial.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Industrial.
Mr. Gallagher, do you have cross-examination?
Sure, just a few questions. Are you a certified appraiser?
Appraiser, no.
No further questions.
Okay. Mr. Cluck, is there any redirect?
Yes. Susan, would you expect your neighbors, when they seek to develop their property, that they comply with the provisions of the zoning ordinance?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Polonic, any recross? Mr. Hartman? No. Mrs. Stabile? No questions. Mr. and Mrs. Yob? No questions. Mr. Balthaser?
No questions.
Mrs. Balthaser?
No questions.
Ms. Fowler?
No questions.
Mr. Fowler?
No questions.
Any other members of the board who have questions? Any recross Mr. Gallagher? Okay, this witness is excused. I will just note, I've changed the order in which I'm asking, I'm calling on the witnesses to reserve you for last, Mr. Gallagher, just in case someone says something adverse that you want to question.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Your next witness, Mr. Cluck.
Mike? I'll let the solicitor
I'll
say your last
you-
name.
Paladuk, Michael Paladuk.
Oh, I've been getting it. And I thought you just stopped correcting me.
We were going to give you a phonetic card, but we couldn't do it.
Please do.
Swear and affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Mike or Michael?
Depends if I'm in trouble or not. Michael's fine.
Okay. Mike, what's your address?
2248 Old Route 22.
And who do you live with?
My wife Laura,
How long have you lived there?
we moved in 17 years ago.
Why did you move here?
We love this area. We sought this out. We found it was going to be a great place to have our horse farm.
Did you bring with you a flash drive?
Yes, sir.
We have marked it as Exhibit 026. We have distributed copies to the board, the solicitor, and Mr. Gallagher. Can you tell us what is on the flash drive?
It is footage from last year of 3 separate locations of the migration of the snow geese. Generally, we do the same with the Canadian geese, but we look forward to the snow geese each year to landing on all these properties, basically, literally on all these fields that are probably involved with the project.
And you took the videos?
My wife and I, we both did.
Okay. And they were on your cell phone?
Originally, and then we transferred them to the computer.
And then today they were put on a flash drive?
Correct, yes.
Do you remember when they were taken?
February 23 and maybe March 23. I think the exact date was right around their migration that we caught last year.
Last year?
Yes,
Okay.
2023.
Russell, can we, unless there's an objection, can we show the?
I mean, I'll object on relevance grounds.
What's your argument, Mr. Cluck?
We had Lori Goodrich testify about the migratory patterns. She talked about the historic nature of the Appalachian Trail, Hawk Mountain. Everybody has talked about the scenic view. And we are showing you a visual demonstrative exhibit of what that scenic view and migratory patterns are.
I'm going to overrule the objection on relevance grounds. Mr. Schell, if you want to play the video, and then those of you on Zoom, we're going to try to share the screen so that you can see it as well.
There is no video, correct? I mean, no audio? It'd be great if there was.
I have been advised that there is no audio.
Okay, all right, because it's impressive. It's about 2 minutes tops, folks, so it's not very long. And it's just 3 locations. That is on the monuments bordering the Blile Road properties. That's looking west from Monument Blind. Yes, sir.
I guess we're going to try to have you do some narration. The view that was shown, what was that in the background there?
Oh, my bad. I'm talking loud enough. So the background, other than the rolling hills?
You started to talk while we showed the video.
Okay.
And so if we're going to do that, we're going to stop the video. You're going
Okay.
to say what you want to say, then we're going to start the video.
Got it.
Okay.
When we see the migrations and we see their landing on these properties, we went literally to Monument and Blile Road. We're right at that intersection. And it's the farm looking west in this particular video, and this is the birds, hundreds of thousands coming down for the particular night.
Do you know whose property this is that we're looking at the at the 23-second mark.
I don't know who that belongs to on this side of Monument, west side. The one on Belial, I think it's the Frederick property, am I right? Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Justin, thank you. Go ahead.
That is the birds sitting down on the Belial Road property right across the street. They were at both sides of the road, so I separated them by two separate videos.
So this is the second video.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll just note for the record that we're at 57 seconds on the video that's been marked as objector 26.
Essentially, the three videos with they repeat twice.
Say that again?
There's three separate videos, and they just starting the first round over again. They repeated, so this is the start of the first video again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's 25 more seconds of the same.
Well, starting everything over again, the videos 1, 2, and 3, the two separates that they just replayed again.
Right, so
That's how
what
we
we're looking
record
at
it.
is what was in the beginning.
The first section was the Monument Road. The second section was Belial, and the third section was Sunday Road. I may have not said that correctly. The church was in the background on that last one, so I may have missed saying Sunday Road on the one with the church in the background. That encompasses the whole entire property from left to right, the south of us.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just to note for the record that the board has just watched a video, and as has been testified to, it depicts birds. You know, I can't identify what type of birds they are because I'm not qualified to.
There's a snow geese. Yes.
I believe you. I'm not qualified to identify them for these purposes. Landing on different properties, flying, and contrary to the proffer, there was in fact audio of the birds singing while they were working. I think at this point, is there anything else on this video, Mr. Cluck?
Not that we need. Not that we need. It's all right there. Said yes, sir.
That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take the video down. Do you have other questions for this witness?
I don't think so. Hold on. No. Do you have well water?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there anything that you wanted to testify to that I have missed in your testimony this evening?
Oh, just concerns like the rest of the folks with that being water runoff, because also our property starts the watershed for Reading, and rainwater or washes from that direction come down to our property as well as off Sundays and to the west of us as well. So we're kind of the low point. We have a creek and a wetland area on the back of our property, and that starts again the watershed for Reading.
You also have a concern about the risk of fire and of how would a fire be fought?
Like the rest of our folks in the area, I'm sorry for being away from the mic, that if a fire were to occur from Mother Nature, lightning, hail stuff, how would it be put out? And that's, I feel, a great danger to everyone's health because there's no means of putting a fire out, I've understood. While I'm not an expert, I've watched videos and say there's really not a lot of ways to put these fires out but let them burn. That's what we've heard and what we've seen. There's not a lot of information, documents out yet, but it's, let it burn, I guess.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Mrs. Pahalnik, now
Silent H.
Silent H. Palanuk.
Palanuk.
Palanuk. Mrs. Palanuk, this is a unique opportunity to cross-examine your husband.
I'll get mine later.
Do you have any questions? Mr. Hartman, do you have any questions? No. Mrs. Stabile? No questions. Mr. and Mrs. Yob? No questions. Mr. Balthaser?
No questions.
Was that a couple of questions or no questions?
No questions.
Oh, sorry. Mrs. Balthaser?
No question.
Ms. Fowler?
No questions.
Mr. Fowler?
No questions.
Members of the board?
How you doing this evening?
Oh, okay for a Thursday.
Yeah, how about it? Is this an annual thing that you see out your window every year?
Pretty much, yeah, we look forward to it, yes.
Okay, because you just had mentioned 2 dates that you took the video, and I've seen it as well at my place. So, you know, birds do adjust to whatever's around, and now for some reason they're in our area, because I've had them 400 yards from my kitchen window as well. I mean, and it is a nice thing to see.
Yeah. Again, we look forward to it, and you know, the scary part is environmentally, I don't know, but what if those birds misread that for water and they crash? There's been so many discussions on that. Just you don't know what you don't know, so to speak. And what could become of the birds, because that's their natural area, as well as the raptors that come over to hunt, feed on the areas, and what would change, you know, with this all of a sudden introduced. You know, it's scary.
All right, thank you for your opinion.
Forgive me, your address is what?
2248 Old Route 22.
Okay, so your driveway enters off Old 22.
Correct, yes.
And your backyard is facing the Frederick property.
Yes,
Okay.
Our property butts up to 3 of the properties directly in line with Blau Road.
Right. So as Dave mentioned the last time to last witness, there was a concern regarding, you know, people have the right to do with what their own property, right?
Mhm.
And I respect that right too. My question here is, on out the front of your driveway, the property on between Old 22 and 78 is zoned as what?
That's agricultural.
That is.
Yes.
Some parts of that's industrial?
I assume, I don't know.
Okay.
My property's both agricultural and residential. My
Right.
property, yes.
So my question is, you're against this project. Would you be against it if the proposed industrial solar site was placed on industrial land?
Okay. To my opinion, if it's right in someone's face and backyard, yes.
Okay. But my question is, the township has land zoned for certain uses.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I'm getting at here.
Right. Okay, what do they do to the existing properties?
Right.
You know, does it come down to values and everything else that we've been discussing?
Okay.
It's a great concern.
Okay. That's all I have.
I have no questions.
No questions.
Mr. Gallagher, cross-examination.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir. Almost.
What is your profession?
I am retired.
Congratulations. What did you do
I
for,
was in the steel business for 23 years and was a college football coach for 7 years prior to that.
where?
West Virginia Wesleyan, Kenyon College, and then 1 year in high school in New York.
What position?
Everything. Offense, defense, low line, special teams, strength coordinator, and a little bit of everything.
Oh, I played college football as well.
Where
Played
at?
at Allegheny.
Okay,
So,
we played Allegheny.
Yes, back in the
Beat you
day.
too. We did.
Are you do you have any experience as a wildlife specialist?
No, no,
As a hydrologist?
no,
Biologist?
No.
Geologist?
No.
As an engineer?
no.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No.
Thank you. Your next witness, Mr. Cluck.
Lois Peters? Who took the photos? Oh, come on up. Sorry, Lois. Freaked you out, huh?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you just state your name for the record?
Carol Burkert.
Thank you.
Carol Burkert, B-U-R-K-E-R-T. Yes.
Be within a minute, Carol. Hold on. Carol, what's your address?
1876 Old Route 22 in Len Hartsville.
And how long have you lived there?
43 years.
And you own the property?
Yes. Actually, the property was owned by my family for over 80 years. It was a big farm in that area.
Can you move the mic down or hold it?
Okay.
You're also retired?
I am.
What was your occupation?
First half of my working career, I was a nurse and a first responder with the Hamburg ambulance for part of that time. After that, I became a CPA. I was an audit specialist for the Department of the Auditor General and an assistant director of the Bureau of Fiscal Review for the PA Treasury Department. And in the Treasury, in the finance building, when they learned my background, they set up an emergency response team, which I was one of the heads of that team for the 8 years that I worked over there.
Okay. Do you have well water?
Yes.
Are there trees on your property?
Yes.
Where are the trees located?
I have a row of hemlock trees on the west side of my property, just perpendicular to Old 22. And then I have some older hemlock trees behind my, in the south side of my property.
And do those trees serve as a barrier to the solar panels?
No. No, not at that area.
We marked as Exhibit 027. I believe I gave you a copy. The photograph?
Yes,
Okay. From where was this photograph taken?
my backyard.
That's from your backyard? Talk into the mic.
My backyard.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. When was it taken?
I think it was February, I wrote on the back of your copies, I think February of 2022.
Okay. And this, you said from your property?
Yes.
And whose property are we looking at with the, I don't know if it's a barn or a house?
The house that's along Klaus Road, and it's the Gaspari property on the other side of that,
Okay.
where the birds are.
So, and the white, those are snow geese?
Yes,
And that's the Gaspari property?
that's my understanding that it is, yes.
Okay. And your understanding is that's where there'll be solar panels if this project is approved?
Yes.
You like to garden?
Yes,
How long have you grow your own vegetables?
I do.
You describe it as a large garden. Tell the board what you mean, why do you believe it's a large garden?
It's large when you maintain it by yourself. I mean, I'm not good at the measurements, but it's longer than this room and about maybe from people sitting here to the wall.
Are you
Picture that.
I'm sorry, finish.
I'm done.
Okay. Are you concerned about the heat island effect from the solar project?
Yes, I am.
Why are you concerned about the heat island effect?
It gets really hot out there in the summertime, and if it's really dry, I find sometimes I have to stop watering. I don't want to dry out my well. I grow all my own vegetables, like I said. And I did a lot of research. I don't pretend to be an expert, as the other expert witness is, but I've read where the heat island effect does raise the temperature in the surrounding area at least 3 to 4 degrees, which is what the article here is that I showed you, and I have it highlighted.
Showing you what's marked as Exhibit 028. Where did you obtain this document?
I did research on the internet, and I found that, and I printed it off. It has 35 references in the back that sound credible. I don't pretend to understand all the technical parts in there, but I am concerned about raising the temperature in the area. It'll cost me more to cool my home, and I'll have to water more often, if that's the case. That's my concern.
And you're on well water?
Correct.
Okay. Did you highlight certain aspects of the abstract on the first page?
Yes.
Why don't you read into the record what you highlighted?
Okay. The first one, transitions to PV plants alter the way that incoming energy is reflected back to the atmosphere or absorbed, stored, and re-radiated because PV plants change the albedo, vegetation, and structure of the terrain. Prior work on the PVHI has been mostly theoretical or based upon simulated models. We found that temperatures over a PV plant were regularly 3 to 4 degrees centigrade warmer than wildlands at night, which is in direct contrast to other studies based on models that suggest that PV systems should decrease ambient temperatures. Deducing the underlying cause and scale of the PVHI effect and identifying mitigation strategies are key in supporting decision-making regarding PV development, particularly in semi-arid landscapes, which are among the most likely for large-scale PV installations.
And who is the lead author of this report?
It mentions a Greg Barron Gafford, Rebecca Miner, Nathan Allen, Alex Cronin, Adria Brooks, Mitchell, Pavio Zuckerman, and their credentials are listed on the last 2 pages under the references.
Do you recognize the lead author?
No, I don't.
If I told you he was their expert witness and Exhibit 34 is his study on the heat island effect, and in fact at Appendix 2 of his report, he provided a copy of this particular report that you found and copied and we put into evidence tonight. Would that surprise you?
Yes.
If I told you on page 4 in the executive summary of Dr. Baron Gafford's expert report, quote, "It's his understanding in all cases within the Mountain Trail Solar Project that the plan is to reintroduce native vegetation throughout the site."
I object. This is already in the record. She's not an expert, and Dr. Baron Gafford was cross-examined at length for 3 hours, I believe at the second hearing in this matter.
Mr. Cluck?
If I could finish, I would get to my question.
Finish the question, but please don't answer the question until we've had a chance to rule on the objection.
The rest of his sentence says, "as well as retain a vegetative buffer in the form of older growth trees along the border between residences and the project." The question is, are there older growth trees along the border between your residence and the solar project?
Yeah, I'll restate the same, I'll make the same objection, but there's also no foundation that she's an expert in what constitutes a growth tree, what effect that would have on the heat island effect.
Okay. I'm going to sustain the objection, but give you the opportunity to lay a foundation, Mr. Cluck.
She's not being called as an expert. She's testifying whether or not there are trees on her property, and she already testified that there are no trees on the border. There's a hemlock row, but it isn't a vegetative buffer. And I just want to establish that her property conditions are not consistent with the expert report about how they minimize heat island effect. And she's already testified what she believes the impact of a 3 to 4 degrees Celsius increase in temperature on her property. She said it affects the amount of water she uses and the amount of energy she uses to cool her house. She doesn't need to be an expert for that. And I don't know that there's any foundation to lay because that's the testimony.
Can you tell me about the trees that are on the border of your property?
Okay, on the...
Into the microphone.
My house is on a hill. Okay, so you've got my driveway, and it's kind of an L-shaped driveway, then up to my house. On the very lower end of my property, it's 1 1/3 acres, and I also have 1 1/3 acres on the other side of an empty lot. But my main property, the hemlock trees are along the driveway at the very lower end of my property. And then I have a few in my backyard inside my fence, but there's nothing from my garden to the end of the yard on the south side, which is the Gaspari property would be southwest of my house.
Okay. So those trees are not between where your garden is and where...
Right, there's nothing between my garden and any other property.
Okay. And these hemlock trees, how old are they?
About 40 years old.
Okay. Mr. Clark, do you have any other questions for this witness?
No, is there anything that you want to discuss in your testimony that I failed to cover tonight?
No.
That's all I have.
Okay. Mrs. Palinuk. It only took us 11 hearings. Thank you. Mr. Hartman, no questions. Mrs. Stabile, no questions. Mr. and Mrs. Yob, no questions. Mr. Balthaser.
No questions.
Mrs. Balthaser.
No questions.
Ms. Fowler.
No questions.
Mr. Fowler. No questions. Questions from the board?
I guess I just want to back up and get some clarification on it. This report, Exhibit 28, that was passed out, the author that, one of the authors or references was who again?
Greg Barron, Gafford, Rebecca Miner, Nathan Allen, Alex Cronin, Adria Brooks, Mitchell, Pavio, Zuckerman.
And one of those authors was the applicant's witness?
I didn't know that till just now. I wasn't aware of that.
Is that a yes?
If I can,
It is.
34.
Okay, that's what I want to hear, or not hear, understand, sorry. That's all I have.
Mr. Gallagher, cross-examination.
No, I have no questions. I mean, I believe just be clear, you're a registered nurse.
I was a licensed practical nurse, and I'm also a CPA.
Are you currently still practicing?
No, I'm not. I'm retired.
And you have no practical experience, professional experience with respect to it. It's known as the PI, get that?
No.
Any redirect?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay.
All right, batting cleanup. Ron?
Okay. Before Mr. Stabile's testimony, we're going to take a 10-minute recess.
You said before?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, we're going to go back on the record now, and I believe where we had left off before the break was that Mrs. Stabile's husband was about to take the stand.
I want to confirm, Lois, you and Tim are not testifying, correct?
He's running late, so I'm...
Well, we'll see. Ron, talk slow. Swear the witness, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
State your name and address to the record, please.
Ron Stabile, 198 Blisle Road, Lynn Hartsville.
How long have you lived there?
35 years.
I'm assuming you live with your wife?
Yes.
What's your occupation?
Financial advisor.
And you're not retired?
Not retired.
Where did you live before Blisle Road?
I was born and raised in Iowa, which is significant because the reason I moved to that property is because of the mountain range. We don't have mountains in Iowa, so I was captivated by it. So that was the draw.
Okay. Do you have well water?
Yes.
To your left on the conference table, I laid out the exhibit of the conditional use plan and what's called the drainage maps. Directing your attention to the drainage maps. Is that the one to your right?
I know the second one we were looking at. I'm not sure what the first one.
Showing you what's been marked as drainage area DA101. Is your property depicted on that document?
Yes.
And is that the post-development drainage area?
Yes.
And your property is on, you can be seen there?
Yes.
And in fact, your name is there as the owner of the property. So for the record, it can be identified as 198 Blisle Road.
Correct.
What is proposed to be across the street from your property?
One of those catch basins.
What's it labeled? Do you see a title for that catch basin or detention basin?
Proposed MRC dry extended detention basin, number 15.
And we heard about managed release concept in Mr. Haig's testimony. We don't need to go over that. Do you have particular issues and concerns when there's a storm or rain event and how it impacts your property?
Yeah, that my property is the absolute lowest property on Blisle Road. So we get quite a bit of runoff. As a matter of fact, my backyard and Bill Knoll's property is constantly flooded.
Where's Bill Knoll's property?
He is looking out my house. He's to my right.
Okay, go ahead.
And on occasion, if you ever do have standing water on Blisle Road, it's right there. And as a matter of fact, if you drive down Blisle Road, you'll see the patchwork from, the wear and tear over the years, largely because of the standing water. There's more potholes, et cetera, right in that spot. So I have some concerns that that's where the standing water is. And typically, and it's happened only 3 times, so it takes a deluge, but when there's standing water, I typically get water in my basement. Again, it's only happened about 3 times, but it always seems like if there's standing water up there, it ends up in my basement. My concern is that this catch basin, I'm assuming there's going to be more standing water in there than there typically is on this road. And it's a matter of me to the supervisors, or maybe a little bit further, from the road. So it's right on the other side of what is now a ditch.
Okay, so your current condition, you have standing water that appears both on your property and on Blisle Road?
The back of the property, water will flow there, but that's from another direction. So it's mainly on the road.
Okay, and the road is adversely affected because of the standing water. Over time, it I guess, erodes the pavement.
Correct.
Now, across the street presently, what's the land use?
Agriculture?
Okay, and can you tell from the drainage area map, you said you're the lowest property on Blau. How high does the property across the street go based on the elevations on the map?
I object. He's providing testimony that is not relevant. It's not his expertise. This is financial advisor.
Can you read back the question?
Can you tell me from the drainage area map, you said you're the lowest property on Blau. How high does the property across the street go based on the elevations on the map?
The objection is sustained.
He's not testifying as an expert, he's reading a map.
Ask your next question.
Let the record show, I was trying to ask the witness to read the numbers on a map. He's not testifying as an expert. There's no basis to sustain.
The entire line of questioning.
Would you let me finish? That the rules of evidence do not apply. He's not an expert. He's testifying about his property. He knows his property. He knows its elevation. And all you have to do is look at the map that's in the record to show what the number is for the elevation of the property across the street. And I'm rather disturbed that the objection was sustained.
Ask your next question, please.
That's all I have. Thank you, Ron, for your attempt to testify. And I'm sorry that you were cut off.
Mrs. Palinuk. Mr. Hartman.
My two questions are, Ron, you made a bill affect your well water and your drainage, right?
I am not sure about either of those. All I know is there's a lot of water that is currently going across my property, and I'm anticipating more. And some standing water that isn't there now, that will be there.
That would be my concern if I lived where you live.
Any other questions, Mr. Hartman? Mrs. Stabile, you also have a very unique opportunity to cross-examine your husband. So no questions. Mr. and Mrs. Yaub. Mr. Balthaser. You're on mute, Mr. Balthaser.
No questions.
Mrs. Balthaser.
No questions.
Ms. Fowler. Mr. Fowler. Members of the board.
The only question I have is how much I've seen pictures from your property in the past that you brought them to the township meeting and that stuff, and I understand your dilemma. What percentage of the water would you say comes down the north side of Blau Road from the front yards of your neighbor's property and runs down yours?
North side, I'm not sure I'm following you.
You live on the north side of Blau Road, correct?
Correct.
So do you get any water? The roads are normally crowned, so whatever water is on the north side comes down the north gutter line, which would come down to your driveway. What percentage of that would you say is from the north side and your neighbor's properties?
I would say very little. However, that gutter, as you phrase it, doesn't work properly. I don't know if it needs to be dredged or whatever, and I've come to a meeting and suggested that. So it doesn't drain properly and the water just stands up at the road. Now, how much comes down to my house? No, it's pretty well sloped there. It goes down the driveway, as you pointed out, and even down the left side between the house to me and the one on the left. The problem isn't typically flooding because of the water runoff. In the backyard, yes, but it does get into my basement, and the only coincidence, if you will, is I always see standing water up there when it comes in my basement.
Yeah, but you do get some down the north side of the road in the north gutter, correct?
Again, I'm not sure I'm following you. Is there water in that gutter?
Yes, when
Yes.
it rains. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So you're getting some of that. That's what I'm getting at.
Ron, just to clarify your testimony here tonight, your concern is that there's water runoff now, given the impervious surface of the agricultural land, and there's an additional runoff onto your property. And your concern is, with all this additional impervious surface on on the neighboring property, is going to put in a collection basin that's going to overflow and be a lot more water to your property. Is that your concern?
Potentially. I didn't even think about it overflowing, quite frankly. I just thought the water has a greater opportunity to stay around longer, and thus eventually make its way down and then wherever.
Okay.
Mr. Gallagher, cross-examination. Any redirect?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Stabile, you may be excused. Mr. Cluck, do you have any other witnesses?
The objectors move into evidence, I think it's exhibits 25 through 28. We move into evidence 25 through 28.
Okay. Are there any objections, Mrs. Palinuk, to the exhibits that are being offered? Mr. Hartman? No objections. Mrs. Stabile? Mr. and Mrs. Yob? Mr. Balthaser?
No objections.
Mrs. Balthaser?
No objections.
Ms. Fowler? Mr. Fowler? Mr. Gallagher?
No objections.
The exhibits are admitted and made part of the record. Do you have any additional witnesses?
That's all we have for our case in chief. We reserve our right for additional evidence depending on the nature of the rebuttal case.
On what authority? If you reserve time, then I have to give Mr. Gallagher time for a counter rebuttal to your rebuttal.
If evidence is introduced that goes beyond the case in chief and is not in other words, if he has a new plan, I get to have.
I understand. If they present new evidence, then you reserve time.
I think I'm trying to say that.
Okay, I understand. That's fine. Okay. So we are now going to move on to our additional parties. Mrs. Palinuk, do you plan to testify or put on a case in chief? You're looking at me with. Okay, so let me take a moment here. So what you've seen over the last couple of evenings is that the objector has called witnesses who have testified. Those of you who have entered your appearance as parties have the opportunity to do the same. So if you have witnesses or you want to testify yourself, this is not the time for a long speech or an argument as to whether the application should be approved or not approved. This is a time for you to present evidence or facts that you want the board to hear. I do not. All I have is like a closing statement. Okay, so that we will reserve till that portion. Mr. Hartman. You do what? No. Mrs. Stabile? No. Mr. Yob? Just what? Okay, do you want to be placed under oath to testify about that? Well, that's up to you. If you have something you want to, if you have facts that you want the board to hear. Now, this is not argument about whether the application should be approved or not, but if you have things you want the board to hear, this is the time to do that.
Can you swear for the testimony you're about to read is the truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. So I'm just talking, is that what it is? Or? It's just a view. I'm on a hill above the Frederick property. Pretty much everything we see out our back windows, other than our own property, is the Frederick property and the Blue Mountain. That's our entire view. So I don't know how many acres of the 440, whatever is Frederick's property, but fully 1/2 of that we would be looking at constantly. And about, the sun reflection. The sun sets over Port Clinton, and there's no way you stick a mirror between me and Port Clinton that I'm not going to get glare from that.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Hang out for 1 second. Mrs. Palanek, any questions? Mr. Hartman, any questions? Mrs. Stabile. Mr. Balthaser, any questions?
No questions?
Mrs. Balthaser.
No questions.
Ms. Fowler. No questions. Mr. Fowler.
No questions.
Members of the board.
Just for clarity, you live on what road?
Sunday and Crick. Sunday and Crick.
And your address is?
485 Sunday.
Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Gallagher. No questions. Mr. Cluck. No questions. Thank you. You may sit down. Okay, Mr. Balthaser. Is my understanding that you have a case you want to present?
Yes, I want to present a case.
Okay.
I have some exhibits. I want to be my own expert witness. Glenn Fowler has 4 exhibits for distribution that I want to attach to the record.
Okay, so Ms. Fowler is now going to distribute those exhibits. Can we mark each packet as Balthaser 1, 2, 3?
This is Balthaser has one, so we're looking at it.
Oh, that's right, Mrs.
Yeah, hearing what's going on.
You say Mrs. Balthaser has one. Okay. Should be separate. So Bruce Balthaser 1. I want to mark each of them individually in case there's an objection to the.
I thought there was already a Balthaser one.
For Mrs. Balthaser. Yes.
Mr. B1?
Yeah, Mr. B 1, 2, 3, and 4.
And how are those numbers then?
So Bruce, what's going to be, so just so you know, the document that starts with critical review of solar glare has been marked as Mr. Balthaser 1. The article, the research article, a study of hazardous glare potential to aviators, is Balthaser 2. The document that starts with rules and regulations is Mr. Balthaser 3. And the document from the U.S. Department of Energy called Solar Glare Hazard Analysis Tool is marked as Mr. Balthaser 4.
Before. Okay.
You may proceed.
Okay, so I live on I'm sorry.
You need to be sworn in, I'm sorry. Yes, just give me 1 second. Yeah. I can do it, Justin.
Mr. Balthaser, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may proceed.
Okay, I'm free to proceed at this point.
They have to flip the camera.
Can you flip the camera back again?
Mr. Balthaser presenting any witnesses, or is he his own witness?
Are you your own witness, Bruce?
I'm going to be my own witness.
Yes. So I have you spotlighted so that everyone here can see you. So I know it might be a little disconcerting, but to be watching yourself, but that's the way we need to do it.
And I believe he mentioned that he wanted to testify in an expert capacity. Can we?
Mr.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear.
Can't hear you.
We need a little more
Okay.
volume.
Mr. Balthaser, can you please state your address for the record?
176 Blyle Road.
And you are testifying via Zoom this evening, correct?
Yes, I want to testify regarding the solar glare and glint analysis report.
Let me just get some preliminary matters out of the way. You're testifying via Zoom tonight. You are able to hear us okay?
It's difficult. We'll go through it.
Okay. And you indicated earlier that you wanted to testify as an expert. What qualifications do you propose that you have expertise in?
Okay, I have an electrical engineering degree from Penn State University. I'm a PA professional engineer from 1994 to 2019 for 25 years. I worked for MedEd, the electric utility company that serves the area. I worked there for 33 years, retiring in 2018. 15 years of that. Had experience with electrical construction and maintenance, supervising crews in building, upgrading, repairing medium voltage distribution lines. 18 years experience in the energy services field, promoting electrical uses technologies for industrial, commercial, and residential customers by doing feasibility studies for studying electric alternatives to various fuel sources. I created rate comparison programs, software programs, and I assisted customers using computer programs and designing geothermal, water source, HVAC systems, and also assisted them in general energy conservation programs.
Do you have any experience with regard to solar?
No.
Okay. Mr. Cluck, do you have questions for this witness as to voir dire?
What's he qualified as?
What are you asking to be, what area of expertise are you asking to be qualified as an expert for?
Looking at the glare study.
So
Analysis of the glare study. Exhibit 37.
So as an expert with regard to glare in a solar project?
And analysis of the glare program. I did not do the analysis. I'm using merely the program that Kimley Horn performed, and I'm using the exhibits or the references that they had on page 10 of the glare report. I studied the glare report, did analysis on that, and then I've used the other three references: a study of the hazardous glare potential to aviators, the FAA federal regulation, the 2021 Federal Aviation Administration regulations. And then I also reviewed the SGHAT User's Manual, and there's some examples I want to review there. I want to make some corrections or make some comments about comments that were made in the study and draw this all together.
And
give some examples of yellow glare, things like that.
What about your experience in your career puts you in a position to testify about this in an expert capacity?
Well, I've done quite a bit of analysis with other computer programs, studying heating systems, cooling systems, all sorts of energy systems, geothermal, mostly related to electrical engineering type things, electrical studies, substations. I did a variety of things over 33 years. Lots of analysis, lots of studies, written computer programs.
Are you using the same skills and analysis? Are you using the same skills and analysis tools in evaluating these studies as you did in your professional career?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Cluck, do you have questions? Please use the microphone, as I think it'll be easier for him to hear.
Yeah. Sorry, Bruce, I missed it. What was your occupation?
I was an electrical engineer for our Metropolitan Edison Company.
Okay, and so in your capacity as an electrical engineer, you had to review rules and regulations and manuals?
Yes.
And you had to interpret them as they applied to your work experience and your projects?
Absolutely. Yes.
That's all I have.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yeah,
in the microphone.
Sorry.
Just because he won't be able to hear you otherwise.
I believe you already answered this. You have no specific experience with respect to the modeling equipment that was conducted or testified to by Mr. Cleveland, the Solar Forge modeling?
I'm unable to understand the question. Pretty quiet.
You've never modeled glare
Quiet.
before. You have no practical experience with modeling glare.
With modeling glare. I've used I went on the site, the Cyndia laboratory site. I reviewed their specifications for the software. They have a sample software that they allow you to do with no charge. So I did some manipulation with that, but I've never done an official study.
And you've never reviewed glare for anything in your 33-year experience before this application was filed?
No.
Mrs. Palinuk, do you have any questions with regard to his qualifications? Mr. Hartman? Mrs. Stabile? Mr. Yob? Mrs. Balthaser?
No.
Ms. Fowler? No. Mr. Fowler? No. Any members of the board have any questions with regard to qualifications?
Yes, Bruce, my question to you is, you are interpreting the application that was put in front of you.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Okay. And so Mr. Balthaser is asking that he be admitted as an expert and as an expert in the field of electrical engineering, particularly as it relates to solar glare and glint. Yes, Mr. Cluck.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. Mr. Gallagher mentioned Mr. Cleveland. The report was not prepared by Mr. Cleveland. That's the Kimley Horn glare and glint analysis, and that's what I believe his documents are going to the report, not Mr. Cleveland's testimony, I think.
We'll find out.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Is there any objection to the request by Mr. Balthaser to be admitted as an expert in this field?
Yes, for the reasons he answered. He has no experience in this field whatsoever. He doesn't even meet the minimal threshold to be an expert in Pennsylvania. So this would be opinion testimony.
Is there any argument from you, Mr. Cluck?
Why would Mr. Just to understand, shouldn't Mr. Balthaser be making the argument? I don't believe Mr. Cluck's representing Mr. Balthaser.
I will give Mr. Balthaser a chance. I'm letting everyone weigh in on your objection.
I don't believe a critical review requires Mr. Bruce B. to be an expert or have experience with solar panels, but I think his years of experience in reading regulations and applying them to projects, especially his skill set as an engineer, I think he can do a critical review. He may have some issues about a professional opinion about things, but I think a critical review is necessary, and I think he's the one qualified to give it.
Mrs. Palinuk, do you have an argument on whether he should be admitted as an expert?
I feel as though the old paper ceiling thing, just because we don't have actual credentials does not mean that we don't have experience and the ability to do certain tests.
Okay. Mr. Hartman? Mrs. Stabile? Mr. Yob? Mrs. Balthaser?
Well, I think he should be able to, talk about the analysis of the information that he has gathered, since he is, he's been an electrical engineer, has been used to, reading all kind of technical documents, for over 30 years. So I definitely think he is qualified.
Ms. Fowler?
I think someone with Bruce's skill and experience should have the right to testify on this subject.
Mr. Fowler?
Considering that Bruce is an electrical engineer by degree and by practice, and given his years of experience, I believe engineers throughout the course of their work history encounter studies that they might not necessarily know a lot about, but they figure them out because it's part of their job. So this is just, in my opinion, one of those examples of something that's a little bit different, but it's still engineering and it still can be understood.
So
okay.
Now I would just...
Wait. Not yet. Mr. Balthaser, this is your opportunity to argue as to why you should be admitted as an expert witness.
Well, a lot of the things that I'm pointing out are misstatements in the study. That's one thing. There's another, they talk about a lot of things related to the FAA, so I wanted to clarify those regulations. I also wanted to demonstrate, want to report the definition of yellow glare as presented in the report. I also want to show the extent of the yellow glare as presented in the report. So I'm not redoing the report, I'm just analyzing the report. I'm just presenting the facts as the facts. I'm trying to present the whole story in the report. There are lots of things. I'm not rewriting the report. I'm not redoing the report. Just using the evidence that's presented there. I'm not even refuting the evidence that they have.
Okay. And are you using the skills?
So, analyzed many reports over the years. That's part of an engineer's job, is to look at specifications, technical papers, apply them to the business that you're in, the organization that you're in, explain it to the people that reported to me. You take a technical paper and you explain it to them. It's not like you wrote the paper, but you must present it to them. So that's what an engineer does.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Gallagher.
Yeah, I don't doubt that you're a very bright man and have an accomplished career, as all these witnesses are, but that doesn't give you a specialized expertise in a specific field. Just by analogy, my wife is a physician. She's a gynecologist. Doesn't necessarily mean that I want her performing surgery on me. It's just because you're an electrical engineer, I don't know how that qualifies or has any relevance with anything with respect to a glare analysis. And he hasn't established that, so I don't believe he's qualified to testify with respect to glint and glare. He has no expertise in this area.
Again, I'm only reporting the results. I'm not doing the study. I'm just reporting some of the facts, pointing out some of the facts from the report.
I think that, Mr. Balthaser, I think that you are certainly qualified as an expert, as an electrical engineer, or I think that it is certainly a close call, in my opinion, as to whether you are truly an expert in the area of glint and glare. However, I do think that you have the ability to apply your knowledge and testify about these reports. I don't know that you can render an expert opinion with regard to glint and glare, but I do think that you can be qualified as an expert in the field of electrical engineering, and the board will treat you as such. I think that some of the arguments that Mr. Gallagher has made would really go more to the weight of Mr. Balthaser's testimony as opposed to the admissibility of it. And I am willing to give him, Mr. Balthaser, some latitude in his testimony with regard to these documents. So we will proceed. Mr. Balthaser is qualified as an expert in the area of electrical engineering. So please proceed.
Okay. And we're going to start with the critical review of the solar glare and glint analysis report. And again, I reviewed this extensively. I asked for testimony from the author or creator of the solar glint and glare analysis report. At that point, we were told that Mr. Cleveland was the glare expert, but he was not the author. So this is really some of the things that I've looked at by reviewing the glare report. So number one, there's an incomplete statement on page 5 of the glare report. It's very misleading relative to the hazard of glare from panels. And again, this is from Exhibit B2. Additionally, glare from flat panel PV systems is comparable to that of smooth water and not expected to be hazardous. So that was what was quoted in the glare study. Again, that's on page 5. The reference was Riley and Olson, 2011, and that's what the Exhibit 2 is, a study of hazardous glare potential to aviators from utility scale flat plate photovoltaic systems. So when I reviewed that article, I did not find that exact quote. I found I found it quoted twice in there that's very close to that, and that reference states the comparison of the results showed that the potential for glare from flat plate PV systems is comparable to that of smooth water and not expected to be a hazard to air navigation. The original statement leads one to believe that glare from PV panels is not hazardous at all, not just not expected to be a hazard to air navigation. Nowhere in this reference does it refer to glare not being a hazard to motorists, pedestrians, or stationary locations. So that was the first discrepancy that I found. And then number two, there's a statement on page 4 and 5 of the glare report that needs some clarification on 2 points regarding the Federal Aviation Administration 2021 policy. Now they note here what is said in the glare report. It's worth noting that according to the Federal Aviation Administration's 2021 final policy, in previous years, pilots have reported glare from bodies of water and glass facades resembling the glare produced by solar panels. Software analyzes pilots similarly to motorists. Therefore, results are similar to those found when analyzing pilots near bodies of water or existing building facades. Mitigating glare remains a focus, but is not as significant an issue as initially thought in 2013 when the initial policy was formulated by the FAA. So if we look at Exhibit B3, Federal Register, this is the actual rules and regulation, the May 11th, 2021 rule. And just some quotes there, they're highlighted in yellow. However, the FAA, this is in the Federal Register in the center, middle column, last sentence. The ATCT cab is the air traffic control tower. However, FAA has continued to receive reports of potential glint and glare from on-airport solar energy systems from personnel working in the air traffic control tower cabs. Therefore, the FAA has determined the scope of agency policy should be focused on the impact of on-airport solar energy systems to federally obligated towered airports, specifically the airport's air traffic control tower cab. Policy in this document updates and replaces the previous policy by encouraging airport sponsors to conduct an ocular analysis of potential impacts to ATCT cabs prior to submittal of a notice of proposed construction, and then they have to submit a form. Airport sponsors are no longer required to submit the results of an ocular analysis to the FAA. Instead, to demonstrate compliance, the FAA will rely on submittal of the form 7460-1, in which the sponsor confirms that it has analyzed the potential for glint and glare and determined there is no potential for ocular impact to the airport's ATCT cab. This process will enable FAA to evaluate the solar energy system project with assurance that the system will not impact the air traffic control tower cab. And then there's another statement there in the Federal Register,
Just
first
pause.
column.
Can you pause for just one
First
second?
column, second last to the bottom. The FAA
Yeah.
relies on the airport sponsor statement.
Bruce, we need you. The
Submitted
court reporter
form.
is having some difficulty because you're speaking a little fast. I will also say everyone has a copy of the review you've done, so you don't have to read it. If you just want to comment on it, that would be fine because it's already in the record.
Okay.
You don't need to read it into the record.
Well, I'm just trying to make some points here, so it's going to be just a few minutes. But the point is, though, there's 4 takeaways from this. Prior to the issuance of the final policy, the FAA continued to receive reports of glint and glare on airport solar energy systems on personnel working in the air traffic control tower. And even though, number 2, even though the glint and glare reports aren't required by the FAA, the sponsors must still certify that there will be no potential for ocular impact to the air traffic control tower. So that would mean no yellow glare, which is defined in the glare study as glare with the potential to cause an after-image flash blindness when observed prior to a typical blink response, or green glare, which is defined as glare with no potential to cause an after-image flash blindness when observed prior to a typical blink response. So the yellow glare or the green glare will not be tolerated according to the FAA policy. Number 3, if there are glare impacts to the air traffic control tower after new PV panels are installed, the PV owner must mitigate those impacts at their own expense or face a compliance action for failing to mitigate ocular impacts that interfere with aviation safety. So glare and glint ocular impacts are viewed by the FAA as having the ability to interfere with aviation safety. On to the next point. Glare problems at air traffic control towers are handled aggressively. And this goes to exhibit number 4, the SGHAT user's manual. So this is the manual for the software that was used to create the program. Again, I'm not completing a glare analysis here. I'm just pointing out this case study that's in the manual. So in the manual there, if you want to look at figure 24, that's on, there's a photo there. It shows the glare from the air traffic, viewed from the air traffic control tower at the Manchester-Boston Airport. This is from April 27th, 2012. So you can see what yellow glare looks like. This is a photo of it. Again, this is from the manual. This isn't something I dug up on the internet. This is from the manual. Shows what that glare looks like. And let me get the page number for that, because I gave the whole report.
It's page 24 in the
24.
In the
Okay,
exhibit.
thank you. Yeah, page 24. So what happened was 2 weeks later, there's a second photo. That's figure 25. These solar panels were covered up with tarps because of the glare, due to this is yellow glare. So they did an analysis. Well, actually, step back a little bit. On page 23 of the manual, it says, because of the glare, tarp was placed over the offending PV modules. So we don't know exactly what happened there, but if you can see, the second photo is May the 10th, 2012. The first photo was from April 27th. So this brought a lot of attention. We don't know, again, we don't know exactly what happened. I don't want to say exactly what happened, but we know that it was serious enough that someone placed tarps over top of these solar panels due to the glare, that this was a problem. And what happened then, if you read on in the case study there, they actually used this program, this HGHAT manual, with this yellow glare, and they looked at various scenarios to get rid of the glare from the air traffic control tower. And ultimately, they rebuilt the whole system and rotated the panels 90 degrees so there was no glare impact to the air traffic control tower. So that's how that was handled. And so anyway, the analysis that I did at the solar glint and glare analysis report, they kind of tend to try and memorize what this yellow glare is going to look like. This glare is going to be 5 feet, predicted to be 5 feet off the ground. And if you look at tables 3 to 6 of 48 and the solar glare and glint report, it shows you where that source of that glare is going to be. 5 feet off the ground. So you're going to be looking at an image of the sun, not as bright as the sun, but an image of the sun 5 feet off the ground while you're driving down the road. Now, the yellow glare in the report is predicted on page 6 of the conclusions to be an average of 40 minutes a day. When I looked through all the little charts that they have on, and that's in my supporting data, there's going to be 2 yellow glare periods when there is glare on the various roads. It's going to start as early as 5:45 in the morning and end as late as 7 a.m. in the morning. So, that's the time kids are getting on the bus. They're going to be standing there waiting on the bus between 5:45 and 7 a.m. And then in the afternoon, the glare comes back somewhere around as early as 4:30 p.m. and will end as late as 6:30 p.m. Now, this is not going to be a continuous glare. but just dissecting their little charts there on when the glare begins, the yellow glare. This is how I analyzed this part of this report. So again, this was based on the limited data that's there. The next thing I did was there's charts in there that show you the yellow glare that's going to be on the roadways. So I used, again, this goes down to my supporting data. If you go down to figure 1, this is from page 26 of 48 of the glare report for Blau Road. And I used Google Maps to measure the glare based on their little drawing that they have, their little chart. So just on Blau Road, and this is the stretch that I live on. I kind of live in the middle of this yellow glare. 3,045 feet of Blau Road is going to have yellow glare. And then there's another section of Blau Road. They call it Blau Road. It's actually Sunday Road. But that one's 866 feet that I measured with Google Maps. So that's not 100% accurate. You know, it's a nominal 800 feet. The Blau Road's a nominal 3,000 feet. You know, if you want an exact number, you can measure that. You know, you could measure that off of the charts, but it's very close. Also have data on the other roads, the extent of the yellow glare, but it all adds up to about 8,000 feet of yellow glare will be impacted on the roads. Now, this report did not even look at Monument Road. For some reason, Monument Road was excluded out of the report. They looked at Old 22, they looked at Klaus Road, Hess Road, Gruber Road, Blau Road, and I have a chart there, and they're supporting data in Table 1. And I tried to compile the effect of this yellow glare, but the yellow glare is going to be very severe. Again, it's going to be on 8,000 feet of road for some point of the day, not every month of the year. Again, the chart I have on Table 1 gives you the months of yellow predicted glare and where I pulled that data from. So again, I didn't do a glare study. I just pulled data from this study. Now, they did analyze a few properties here, but they only analyzed 14 of 184. There were 184 properties identified, and that's identified in Exhibit 33, Exhibit B. There's 184 properties that are in the general vicinity of the solar farm. So they only did 14. And of the 14, only 2 had yellow glare. Yet we have 8,000 feet of roadway that's predicted to have yellow glare. I mean, basically every home on Blau Road is going to have yellow glare. They did 2 homes on Blau Road, 2 observation points. One showed yellow glare. The other one shows a little bit of green glare. But curiously, that second home on Blau Road is just outside of that big yellow glare area. So, you know, there's going to be a tremendous amount of yellow glare on the roadways. And we have no idea what the yellow glare impact is going to be on properties. Now, this is yellow glare on the road. So now I'll pick my house. I'm kind of in the middle of that straight stretch of Blau Road at 176. You know, during these periods when there's yellow glare there, I don't see how I'm going to be able to pull out on the road. When I'm going to be staring down the road at this yellow glare, that's 5 feet, the source is 5 feet off the ground. I mean, this isn't like, you know, they characterize this as being like a sunset. Okay, this is, the glare is going to be, the yellow glare is going to be similar to a sunset on a clear day. And we've all had that experience of a sunset on a clear day. You know, you pull up to a traffic light, you're going, is it yellow? Is it red? Is it green? And you're kind of peeking around your visor. When that traffic light is going to be 15 feet off the ground. The source of this yellow glare is only 5 feet off the ground. So this is going to be about the head height of an adult or about the roof height of a car. And again, 8,000 feet of road, they're saying an average of 40 minutes of glare a day. There's many months out of the year where there's going to be no glare. There's no glare in November, December, January, February. No glare during those months. So that average, for that average to be an average of 40, there has to be lots and lots of days that are going to be a lot more than 40 minutes of glare. So,
Thank you. Do you have anything further?
What's that?
Do you have anything further?
I do.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think the glare, there's definitely a violation of Section N of Section 615 solar energy systems of the Windsor Township zoning. Says solar energy systems shall be located on a building lot or parcel in a manner that avoids direct concentrated solar
one moment,
radiation
Bruce.
or
What's the objection, Mr. Gallagher?
He's rendering a legal opinion.
I didn't hear the objection.
The objection is that you're rendering a legal opinion. I don't think he's rendering a legal opinion. I think he's referencing the ordinance, so the objection is overruled. Continue, Bruce, but you can't render an opinion on the application of the ordinance. You can say this is what the ordinance says, but you can't tell us what the legal effect of that is, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I can say it's I believe it's a violation of the ordinance.
Go ahead.
I didn't understand that.
Continue.
Yeah, so that's one section I believe is a violation. The ordinance 806.5G, there's a part there where they talk about the minimization of noxious, offensive, or hazardous elements. And ordinance 806.5.B, determine that the proposed use will not substantially injure or detract from the use of the neighboring property or from the character of the area, and that use of the property adjacent to the area is adequately safeguarded. Glare is going to make driving very hazardous during these yellow glare periods. Glare that jeopardizes the safety of pedestrians is dangerous. I don't think we're going to want to be walking on the road or even driving on the road anytime there's yellow glare projected on the road 5 feet with a source that is 5 feet off the ground, directed into your windshield. I don't even think your visor is having your visor down is going to help. I think this is a very dangerous situation for the residents. It's not just, we talk about the right of use of properties, and, we have farmers there, and a farmer puts manure on the field, that's an inconvenience for a day or so. This is going to be something that every day the sun's shining for the better part of the year. Or an example of a farmer or a neighbor having a loud party. Yeah, they might have a loud party once or twice a year, and you might object to that, and you go, well, that's their use of their property. But this is going to be a hazard every day, 8,000 feet of road. Every day the sun's shining for a majority of the year. So that's my presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce.
I'm done then.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the board? No questions. Mrs. Mrs. Palanuk. Mr. Hartman, any questions? No questions. Mrs. Stabile? No question. No questions. Mr. Yob is no longer with us this evening. Mrs. Balthaser, do you have any questions for your husband?
I do not.
Thank you. Ms. Fowler?
Bruce, could you repeat the part of the ordinance that you were mentioning with glare? You broke up on Zoom, so I couldn't hear it.
Repeat the question. It was pretty quiet.
Could you repeat what you were reading out of the ordinance regarding glare? You were breaking up on Zoom, so we couldn't hear it well.
Okay. I referenced 3 ordinances, Section N of Section 615, Solar Energy Systems of Windsor Township Zoning Ordinance. I referenced Ordinance 806.5.G and Ordinance 806.5B as a boy.
Could you read the specific part about glare, though? I don't have the ordinance in front of me.
Repeat the question, please.
Could you read the specific part of the ordinance that you were referencing about glare? You said it and then you got cut off on Zoom.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time
Maybe you can
understanding the question.
Okay. The question is whether you can read the specific section that you were referencing earlier.
Read this section.
Oh, you wanted
Just
me to
giving
read
the
it?
number, yes.
Okay. All right, I'll go over that again. Section N of Section 615, Solar Energy Systems of Windsor Township Zoning. Solar energy systems shall be located on a building, lot, or parcel in a manner that avoids directing concentrated solar radiation or glare onto any adjacent property or public way. Second ordinance, 806.5.G, impose such conditions in addition to those required as are necessary to assure compliance with the general purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, which conditions shall include but are not limited to harmonious design of buildings, planting, and maintenance as a site or sound screen, and minimization of noxious, offensive, or hazardous elements. The third ordinance I reference is 806.5.B, determine that the proposed use will not substantially injure or detract from the use of the neighboring property or from the character of the area, and that use of the property adjacent to the area is adequately safeguarded.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fowler, do you have any questions? Mr. Cluck?
Just a second. Hi, Bruce.
Hi.
Your critical review, Mr. B, Exhibit 1, page 1, 2, 3. First 4 pages is your critical review. The 5th page is titled Supporting Data, Table 1. Is this from the report, or did you prepare Table 1 based on the report?
I prepared Table 1, extracted data from the report. All my references are on the right side of the table. Glare report reference pages.
All right. I don't know if you have a better microphone, but you're breaking up. I'm going to repeat what I think I heard. You prepared Table 1 based on information in the exhibit report, and on the right column says glare report reference pages. Those are the pages from the report, the glare study, that you relied upon to make this chart, correct?
That is correct.
On the next page, it says Figure 1 and Figure 2. Again, these are your figures based on information from the report.
Yes, the chart on the left is the positions along paths receiving glare. That is from the report. Again, there's a reference there on figure 1, page 26 of 48 of the glare report. And then the two charts on the right, I used Google Maps to get the length of the yellow glare that's depicted in the chart from the glare report.
Similar response on figure number 2 on the same page?
Yeah, same response for number 2, figure 3, figure 4, figure 5, figure 6.
And 7?
Number 7, the plot on the left is from the glare report. The chart on the right is from the SGHAT manual. Let's see, do I have a reference there? It is... That is the chart from page 22 of the HGHAT manual. And that chart demonstrates the that the glare on Klaus Road is actually brighter than the glare from the Manchester-Boston airport, the MHT airport. Because the glare on the left chart for Klaus Road, if you look on the left side is the intensity of the sunlight of the glare. That's in the 10 to the minus 2 range, plus or minus on that. And the glare on the Boston airport was slightly lower than that, down between the 10 to the minus 2 and 10 to the minus 3. So the glare that is projected from the glare study is going to be as bright as the glare that they had at the Boston airport, the one that created the problem there, and the result was that the panels had to be moved.
Okay, now, first page, critical review, point number 1. I want to clarify what you're saying there. You said there's an incomplete statement. You cite to a page in the glare report, and that comes from the conclusion in the glare report. You then have in bold type, citing Riley and Olson 2011, you're not saying that the glare report misquotes Riley and Olson. You're saying the sentence in the glare report that is not a specific quote, but the way it's written is misleading. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is accurate.
Okay, and what's misleading is the conclusion
Objection. He's already testified to this. It's a written statement. This is a little bit of a abuse of process in that Mr. Cluck is effectively treating Mr. Balthaser as he's his witness.
He's entitled to question the witness on cross-examination, so the objection is overruled.
Okay, this is not cross-examination, though. This is further direct examination.
He's entitled to an examination of the witness.
And the point you're making, Bruce, is he left out where the actual quote in the Riley and Olson study only applies to air navigation, and it's your understanding that it's misleading to claim that also applies to Blau Road and the solar project in Windsor Township. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Gallagher.
Hi, Mr. Balthaser. How's Florida?
Very nice.
Very nice. So I just have a couple questions for you. Well, have you ever driven down Witchcraft Road during sunset?
Yes.
Have you ever experienced glare while you're driving during that time?
From the sunset?
Yes.
Yes.
What would you characterize that level of glare?
In what way?
Well, you testified to red glare and yellow glare and green glare. I was just asking, in your opinion, as an electrical engineer, what you think that level of glare is.
Yeah, I would say that's yellow glare.
Okay. And that's without any type of solar facility. All right, that's, of course
Yes.
it is, yes. And did you find that there is any concentrated glare with respect to the proposed application?
No, there was no concentrated glare. That requires parabolic mirrors.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Balthaser, is there any, this would be an opportunity for what we call redirect. So if there's anything that, based on cross-examination, that you feel you need to clarify, you may do so. If you don't, that's okay as well.
I don't think I have any further redirects.
Okay.
On my own testimony.
You have you have presented to the board 4 exhibits marked Mr. Balthaser 1, Mr. Balthaser 2, Mr. Balthaser 3, and Mr. Balthaser 4. Are you asking the board that these exhibits be made a part of the record of this proceeding?
I do.
Okay. Mrs. Palinuk, do you have any objections to these exhibits? No. Mr. Hartman? Thank you. Mrs. Stabile? Mr. Yob? Mrs. Balthaser?
No objection.
Ms. Fowler? Mr. Fowler? Mr. Cluck? Mr. Gallagher?
I object not to exhibits B3 or B4, but with respect to B2, it's a research article, and we would object to its omission. The author of this report is here. We have not even reviewed it. So for that basis, we would object to its omission. The author's not present for us to cross-examine him.
Can you tell me what rule of evidence?
Well, the section 908 of the MPC provides that all parties shall be afforded the opportunity to respond and present evidence and argument and cross-examination of all adverse witnesses on all relevant issues. And to the extent the author of this article is not present, we are not afforded that opportunity.
What rule of evidence are you citing to for your objection?
I'm citing to Section 908 of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, which specifically governs, that's the rule of evidence provided in the statute that is providing the authority for this hearing. Because the rules of evidence don't apply, and that is the specific statute that applies.
That reference was referenced in the glare study. That was used as a reference in the glare study from page 10 of the glare study.
The objection is overruled. All the exhibits are admitted and will be made a part of the record. Thank you, Mr. Balthaser, for your testimony. Mrs. Balthaser, are you intending to present a case this evening?
I do not.
Thank you. Ms. Fowler, are you presenting a case?
I do plan to present a case, but I'm not prepared to present it tonight because I was unaware what my party status would be until tonight's hearing.
That is fine because it is already 10 minutes to 9, so I probably would not have had you present it tonight anyway. Mr. Fowler, are you going to be presenting a case? I just want to get a sense of where we are.
Yes, I'd like to present a case.
Okay. Have I missed any witnesses or any parties who are present? I don't believe I have. So at this point,
Can I just ask, just for preparing time and scheduling further hearings, are the Fowlers, are you presenting any expert testimony? Are you?
I'm presenting evidence.
We're not bringing witnesses.
okay. So you'll be you will both be testifying, and you have perhaps documents or pictures that you want us to see.
Correct.
Okay.
We did have a procedure of providing each other with exhibits days in advance of the next hearing.
So the next hearing is going to be March
21st.
21st. Mr. Gallagher's not available on the 14th. So the next hearing will be March 21st at 6:00 p.m. In this location, the large group instruction room of the Hamburg Area Middle School. I would suggest. Did I say middle school? You see, it's getting too late. It's past my bedtime. The Hamburg Area High School, the large group instruction room of the Hamburg Area High School. I would ask that as a courtesy, that if you have exhibits, that you provide them in advance to all the parties, so that way we can avoid any potential objections of untimeliness issues.
And just even if it's the group email that we had early on, just to schedule additional dates if needed, so we could finish.
Yes, what I'm gonna ask is that any parties will stay after once we adjourn, just so we can talk about some future dates as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So now I'll turn it over to the chairman so that he can entertain a motion to adjourn this hearing in progress until March 21st at 6:00 p.m. here at the Hamburg Area High School Large Group Instruction Room.
Yes, would someone like to make that motion? Do I have a second? All in favor say aye. Ayes have it.
Again, all parties, if you want to just come forward.